Do you believe in angels? Today I'm going to tell you a simply unbelievable story. A girl of just 5 years old got lost in a wild, isolated, inhospitable region. During 5 whole days, she survived alone, without food, facing the cold, the dangers of the forest. But when she was rescued by firefighters, she revealed something no one expected to hear. She said that during all this time, a person appeared and stayed by her side, caring for her, feeding her, protecting her. But this person, it simply didn't exist. No one saw her, there were no traces, nor any logical explanation. Was it an angel, a spirit, or something beyond our understanding? Watch until the end and draw your own conclusions. What happened to this child could change your view of the spiritual world. Stay with us because what we are going to reveal now is truly chilling. The Clarks were a typical American family who lived in the quiet town of Bend in the state of Oregon, known for its natural beauty, crystal clear, rivers and dense forests that stretch into the distance. Anthony and Sarah Clark were loving parents of 3 children. Lisa, the oldest, aged 12, always protective and responsible. Jack, the middle child, aged 9, adventurous and full of energy. And the youngest, Gabriel, a boy of just 5, curious, mischievous, and with a limitless imagination. The family enjoyed spending weekends outdoors, especially exploring the stunning landscapes that surrounded the region. What they could not have imagined was that one of these seemingly harmless outings would turn into biggest nightmare of their lives. That Sunday began like so many others. The sky was clear, the sun reflecting on the calm waters of the Lake Elk, one of the family's favorite spots for fishing and relaxing. Anthony, who loves fishing, decided to take his 3 children for a fun morning by the lake, while Sarah stayed home to prepare lunch. They brought snacks, fishing rods, and even a frisbee to play with afterwards. Gabriel, as always, ran from one side to the other, enchanted by the butterflies, the sounds of the birds, and the animal footprints on the trail. It was one of those days when life seemed perfect, until, in a brief moment of distraction, the little one simply disappeared between the trees. Desperation set in within seconds. Anthony, who was arranging the fishing lines, realized that Gabriel was no longer around. He began calling out to him, first calmly, then increasingly distressed. Lisa and Jack were also screaming for their brother as they ran from one side to the other without success. The lake, with its cold, deep water, was on one side, and on the other, a dense, closed forest with countless trails, intertwined paths, and natural dangers. The feeling of having a lost child in a place like this is simply overwhelming, indescribable. Fear, helplessness, guilt, everything mixes together in a whirlwind of emotions. Deschutes National Park, where Elk Lake is located, is known not only for its beauty, but also for being a wilderness where nature takes its course relentlessly. Animals such as coyotes, black bears, and even cougars inhabit the forests, not to mention the temperatures that, even in spring, can drop dramatically at night. The mere thought of such a small boy alone in that environment would be enough to drive any parent crazy. Anthony knew this. As he ran between the trails and called his son's name, his heart felt like it was going to explode, each minute turning into an eternity. Statistics show that when it comes to missing children in the wilderness, the first few hours are crucial. Experts say that after 6 hours, the chances of finding a child alive start to diminish dramatically, especially if they don't have access to clean water, food, or shelter. Anthony knew he couldn't waste any time. Within minutes, he had called local authorities, and within an hour, search teams were assembling, bringing along sniffer dogs, drones, and rescue equipment. But this forest just seemed like a nightmare. Swallow any trace. The Clark family would never forget that day. The harrowing sound of helicopters hovering over the treetops, the whistles of rescuers getting lost in the vastness of the forest, the sunset turning the lake orange as night approached menacingly. It all seemed so surreal, as if they were living a nightmare from which they could not wake up. And in that moment, Anthony did what any father would do. He knelt down on the side of the trail and through his tears said a desperate prayer, begging that somebody, human or divine, would care for their son until they could find him. When we hear stories like this, it's impossible not to put ourselves in this family's shoes. The pain of losing a child, even temporarily, is one of the most distressing experiences a human being can go through, and what makes this story even more shocking is precisely what happened next, something that no one could have predicted. if this story is already moving you, imagine what comes next. So don't waste any time. Subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell so you don't miss any details of this story that will change your outlook on life. Night fell over Deschutes National Park like a heavy veil of silence and cold. The orange lights of dusk disappeared behind the mountains, giving way to the deep darkness of the forest. After a full day of exhaustive searching, firefighters, volunteers, and police gathered Anthony and Sarah Clark to communicate the most painful decision of all. The search would be suspended until the following morning. Those words cut like a razor. Returning home without Gabriel was like giving up one's soul. But the risks of the forest at night, with its dangerous trails and zero visibility, made it impossible to continue. Even so, the pain of leaving him alone in that vastness was something no parent should have to bear. The way back was silent and devastating. Sarah cried helplessly, her eyes wide open, while Anthony, behind the wheel, seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. All they saw in the rearview mirror was darkness, as if the forest had swallowed not only Gabriel, but hope as well. No one knew exactly what had happened. Had the boy wandered away, curious about some little animal among the trees? Or more frighteningly, was he taken by someone? The park is open to the public, and that day there were several campers, fishermen, and tourists. Although investigators did not want to alarm the family, no hypothesis was ruled out. Tension grew along with uncertainty. And then there was the lake. Immense, deep, treacherous. Accidents involving children there had already been recorded before. The mere thought of Gabriel drowning was unbearable, but something in Sarah's heart told her that wasn't it. She couldn't explain why, but she had the feeling he was alive. Scared, yes. Lost, perhaps, but alive. And when a mother feels this deep down in her soul, there is no statistic or report that can convince her otherwise. It was this intuition that kept her on her feet during that cold night, wrapped in silence and prayers. The search teams decided to focus their efforts on the most plausible hypothesis. Gabriel had wandered off on his own, distracted by something in the forest. Experts explain that when small children get lost in open areas, they tend to follow a straight line without realizing how far they are going. This takes them to areas off the trails, which makes the work of rescuers immensely difficult. The hope in this case is that the child finds shelter, protects himself, and remains in a fixed point, making it easier to locate him. That was what everyone clung to, because imagining anything else would be unbearable. In the city of Bend, where the Clark family lived, the news spread like wildfire. The community came together in a movement that transcended religion or belief. Churches opened their doors for prayer vigils. Groups of residents organized to prepare food and supplies for the volunteers in the forest. Social media was flooded with messages of support and images of Gabriel, a 5-year-old boy with curious eyes and a shy smile, now stamped on every lamppost, every screen, every heart. It was impressive to see how one family's pain had awakened the love of an entire city. In the Clark household, the scene was one of absolute silence, interrupted only by suppressed sobs and the muffled sound of the television broadcasting real-time updates on the search. Sarah clutched Gabriel's favorite t-shirt to her chest, while Anthony, sitting on the couch, could hardly believe what was happening. The night seemed endless. Every minute that passed without news made the anguish increase exponentially. Still, something inside them, perhaps an instinct, perhaps a greater force, whispered, "Don't give up. Gabriel will return." It's amazing how in situations like this, faith becomes an indispensable refuge. Even those who don't consider themselves religious end up in some way directing their thoughts to the spiritual, in the hope that there is something or someone capable of protecting those we love when we can no longer do anything. Anthony, who had always been a practical man, found himself kneeling in Gabriel's room that night, begging God, "Bring my son back." And as he prayed this silent prayer, thousands of people that very night were doing exactly the same thing. If you are also feeling this anguish, if the disappearance of little Gabriel has already touched your heart, then be part of this chain of hope. Right now in the comments, "Come back, Gabriel." Let's join our voices, our energy, our faith, and who knows, strengthen this chain even more so that he can be found alive and return to the embrace of his family. Get ready, because what will happen in the next few days of this story will challenge everything you believe about life and what exists beyond it. The search for Gabriel continued. It was already the second day since her disappearance, and once again the volunteers, firefighters and specialized team returned without any news. The silence of the forest seemed to mock everyone's hope. Every tree, every broken branch, every out-of-place stone was inspected with the anxiety of someone seeking a miracle. But the day ended like the previous one. No sign of Gabriel, no response, just the anguish of time passing mercilessly. And as night fell, once again, everything seemed to be lost in the darkness, including the faith of some. On the third day, however, something changed. While scanning a narrow trail that ran parallel to the side of a little-traveled highway, one of the sniffer dogs stopped. Next to a bush, partially covered by leaves and mud, they found something, a blue cap with yellow details. It was Gabriel's cap. The piece was immediately carefully collected and handed over to the forensic team. But even before any technical examination, the parents recognized the accessory. Sarah fell to her knees. Anthony, with trembling hands, hugged his wife and the cap, the same one that had been given to him by a beloved aunt, the same one that Gabriel refused to take off his head, even to sleep. That small piece, now dirty and soaked, carried an immeasurable weight. It was a piece of Gabriel there, in fact, a trail. Finding the cap was both a relief and a blow. A relief because there was finally a solid clue that Gabriel had been in that area, which reaffirmed the police theory that he had not fallen into the lake as many had feared. But a blow, because now the forest became even more real as the setting for his disappearance. And the worst part, he could be in there, somewhere among the trees and bushes, perhaps injured, perhaps scared, perhaps with someone. The heavy rain of the last few days, however, had erased any tracks, footprints or marks that could indicate the direction he had taken. It was like trying to put together a puzzle with wet and misshapen pieces, and every minute without an answer was another minute of pain. That clue rekindled something that had been slowly fading: hope. The possibility that Gabriel was alive, that he had simply gotten lost, and that perhaps he was trying to find his way back. With each new step into the forest, with each new rumor that emerged on social media or among locals, Gabriel's parents chose to continue, and that requires a kind of courage that only those who truly love are capable of sustaining. Because sometimes faith is all that's left when logic has been lost. As she held Gabriel's cap, Sarah had no doubts. He had been there and was trying to come back. She said it with a conviction that silenced the police. Officers moved the volunteers and rekindled the strength of everyone around her. There was something in the way she held the fabric against her chest, as if it were still warm, as if her son could still feel her embrace from a distance. The search gained new momentum. The forest was no longer a maze of uncertainty. It was now a territory of love in the form of a mission, and even without clear clues, they decided to keep going, because giving up was never an option. And if you were in their place, would you have the strength to continue believing even when the whole world seems ready to give up? Would you continue to keep the faith until the end, even when everything around you seems to be pushing you to give up? Or would you settle for what seems more logical and definitive? Comment below with your opinion. We want to know what you think about this, and how your faith is doing in the face of life's most difficult moments. On the fourth day of searching, hope, which was already looking fragile, was hit hard by an almost fatal blow. At dawn, the team responsible for sweeping the forest found a trail of blood just a few meters from where, the day before, they had found Gabriel's cap. The blood was partially mixed with the damp earth, staining leaves and running in small rivulets between exposed roots. No one knew for sure whether the blood belonged to a human or an animal, but the scene was desolate. A heavy silence spread among the men on the team, as if they all knew, deep down, what this could mean. Upon receiving the news by phone, Sarah, Gabriel's mother, lost consciousness before she could even hear the entire explanation. She fainted right there, surrounded by the family who had been with her in the house where the family had been sheltering since the boy's disappearance. Anthony's scream in despair at seeing his wife fall echoed through the room as a reflection of the pain that consumed that home. When she woke up hours later, the doctors decided to administer a stronger sedative. Sarah then slept for almost 24 hours, immersed in a deep, silent, almost supernatural sleep, as if heaven itself was preparing her spirit for something greater. While Sarah slept at the police headquarters, the team leader called Anthony for a frank conversation. He said that, given the circumstances, The most likely scenario was that Gabriel had been attacked by a wild animal. The region, although rare in incidents of this type, was home to species that could pose a danger to a defenseless child. He didn't want to be insensitive, but he needed to be realistic. Time was against them, and the possibility of Gabriel being alive was now practically zero. Anthony just lowered his head. He felt himself sinking into a place where not even crying could reach. During Sarah's deep sleep, something extraordinary happened. She had a dream that didn't seem like a dream. It seemed too real, too vivid. In the darkness of the forest, she saw a male figure, enveloped by a soft, almost golden light. He walked calmly through the trees with a serene expression and words that touched the soul. "Don't give up. He's close." With a gentle gesture, he parted a curtain of dense vegetation with his hands, revealing on the other side a small clearing. There, Gabriel was, sitting, wrapped in a thick skin that looked like an animal's with berries scattered around him. The boy was smiling. He was fine. The image was so clear that Sarah could even smell the wet earth and the sound of leaves being stepped on. Before disappearing into the light, the man pointed out specific places: a curved trunk, a heart-shaped stone, a tree that split in two in the middle. She woke up sweating, with her heart racing. That hadn't been just a dream. It was a calling. The next morning, as the team prepared for what would officially be the last day of the search, Sarah appeared before the firefighters with a firmness and a determination that was frightening for someone who until then had barely been able to stand up. Her eyes still red but her gaze firm, she said, "Today I'm going with you." The officers tried to dissuade her. They said it was dangerous, that she wouldn't be able to handle the pace, that perhaps it would be better to wait. But Sarah wouldn't accept. "Today I'm going home with my son in my arms," she replied, with a conviction that silenced even the most skeptical of the officers. Without telling anyone about the dream, Sarah was allowed to join the group, as long as she remained accompanied. As they entered the forest, something inside her began to vibrate. Each step seemed guided. It was not she who was searching. It was as if she were being led. The spots shown in the dream began to appear before her eyes, like signs that had been placed there just for her. The curved trunk, the heart-shaped stone, the tree split in half. They were all there, exactly as she had been shown. Sarah's heart raced with each new confirmation, and along with it, something else grew, the certainty that her son was alive. Hours passed. The forest was thick and wet, and the strong smell of wood, moss, and sodden earth seemed to mix with the sweat and fear of everyone there. Sarah, however, seemed immune. There was a shine in her eyes that came, not from reason, but from faith. When they reached the exact spot where in the dream the curtain of vegetation opened, she stopped. She looked around. Her heart almost jumped out of her mouth. It was there. She was sure of it. With all the strength she had in her chest, she screamed, "Gabriel!" Silence answered for a few seconds that seemed eternal, until, like a divine echo, a fragile, childish voice replied, "Mommy!" It was like hearing the miracle itself, cross time and space. Sarah ran, pushed the branches away with her injured hands, and found her son exactly as in the dream, wrapped in thick fur next to red berries, his eyes shining when he saw her. He was alive, without a single scratch. Crying, Sarah took him in her arms, kissing every part of his little face covered in dirt, hugging him as if she would never let go. The agents couldn't understand. They were all perplexed. How had that boy, so small, survived for so many days there, without injuries, without signs of malnutrition or dehydration? Taken to the hospital only as a precaution, Gabriel was examined and released the same day. He was healthy. The only thing he took with him were the memories of something that, later, when talking to his mother, he would begin to reveal. Once at the hospital, after the doctor left the room and Anthony went to get a snack, Sarah looked at Gabriel and, stroking his hair, asked softly, "Son, how did you get away from your father? Where have you been these days and how did you survive?" Gabriel, with innocent eyes and disarming sincerity, began to tell the story. He said he had followed a blue butterfly. At first it seemed like a game, but when he realized it, he was too far away to go back. He cried, shouted for Mommy and Daddy, and then an animal that looked like a wolf appeared, big, with bright eyes. Gabriel cowered, scared, but at that moment, a man wrapped in light appeared. He said he would take care of me until Mommy got here. The boy smiled as he remembered. "He gave me berries, he gave me this little blanket," he said, pointing to the animal skin. "He told me stories, stayed with me at night, kept away the animals that came near. He told me that you would come. I was waiting for you, Mummy." Sarah, overcome with tears, asked, "And where did he go, son?" "He gave me a kiss on the forehead and said, 'Now Mommy is here.' Then he left. He went up into the light." That night, Sarah understood that the dream was not just a memory or imagination. It was a visit, a guidance, an intervention from heaven. Days later, the story was told on TV. Sarah thanked everyone who prayed, emotionally recounted what she had experienced, and publicly declared, "My son was saved by an angel. I have no doubts." Many believed. Others, as always, doubted. They called it a coincidence. They said that everything could have a rational explanation, but there are things that only those who have lived are able to understand. Sarah didn't need to convince anyone. She knew, she saw, she felt. And Gabriel fondly remembered the man of light who protected him. Do you believe that angels walk among us? Comment yes or no and share if you have ever experienced or know someone who has experienced something like this. Let's spread faith, hope, and remember that miracles still happen. This story makes us think, not just about miracles, but about the invisible things that surround us. In the midst of the darkness of that forest, where logic had already been abandoned and the darkest prognoses became plausible, something unbelievable happened. And it wasn't just the reunion between mother and son, it was the reunion between despair and faith, between fear and hope. In a world where we are so often taught to believe only in what we see, there in that dense forest, a woman guided by a dream defied reason and found her son. Gabriel's story is not just about a lost boy, it's about a mother who, even when faced with the harshest sentence that her son might be dead, chose to believe in something bigger. Sarah had no scientific proof, no detailed maps. What she had was a vision, a feeling so strong that it was impossible to ignore. How many times in life do we receive small signs, but ignore them because they seem just coincidences? What if some of these coincidences are actually invitations to see beyond the obvious? In a world so full of doubts and fears, sometimes signs emerge that we are not alone. Stories like those of Sarah and Gabriel are not isolated cases. In many corners of the planet, there are stories of people who were saved from impossible situations by mysterious, inexplicable presences, beings that appear to comfort, guide, or protect. Some call them angels, others guides, or simply miracles. Whatever the name, what these moments have in common is the profound feeling that something divine has intervened. Even if you are not religious, even if your beliefs are based solely on science or reason, it is hard to deny that there are things that go beyond human comprehension. Science studies observable phenomena, but what about the intuition that saves a life? The dreams that show us the way? The moments when we feel profound peace, even in the face of chaos? These moments, however subjective they may seem, change lives. And maybe, just maybe, they are subtle proof that we are being guided, even when we don't realize it. Sarah's journey wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. She traversed a forest, yes, but she also traversed her own limits. And in the end, she not only found Gabriel again, she found her faith again, the faith that had been dormant by fatigue, buried by statistics, but that never ceased to exist. Because when it comes to true love, and especially a mother's love, no strength is too small and no hope is in vain. And maybe right now, you need to hear that too. Who knows? Maybe the next inspiring story could be yours. Maybe you've experienced something similar, or you're waiting for a sign that confirms what your heart already feels. The world is full of hidden stories, silent miracles, and deliverances that only those who have experienced them can tell. And here, on this channel, our mission is to bring these stories to light, to remind you that the invisible also speaks, and sometimes screams. If you liked this story and want to hear more exciting stories about angels and miracles, subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell. Thank you so much for watching this far. Leave your like, share with someone who needs to hear this message today. And don't forget, even when all seems lost, there is still hope. See you in the next video.